Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot of local sports. We'll stay with the pro teams mostly, the New Orleans Pelicans and the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about the Benson family feud. We'll try to get into college basketball, and if we have time, we'll touch on college football as well. Got a great panel for you tonight. Lyons Yellin of WWL TV and my good friend Scott Alexander of ESPN 100.3 here in New Orleans. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Look forward to a great hour.
Happy Mardi Gras, Eric.
Yeah.
It's carnival time.
It is the Mardi Gras edition of Inside New Orleans
That's it,
baby. Gotta love it. That's one of the reasons why we are taping tonight, because of the Mardi Gras parades that'll be happening. And guys always like to start off talking about what's going on in your lives professionally. And we'll start off with you, Scotty. Tell the folks about the new gig.
Having a lot of fun, Eric. Started ESPN Radio back in June. Got my own show from 3 to 6 starting in early July, and now we're 7 months in. It's been going great, and obviously football season wasn't what we expected around here. LSU was a little short of expectations. The Saints, real short of expectations. But still, there's lots to talk about always. And now basketball season's on. You know I love basketball, and it's full speed. Kentucky, LSU just played. That was a great game. LSU fell a little short. And the Pelicans are going to be very interesting for the second half of the season.
Yeah, that's for sure. Lions, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, moving up in the ranks of WWL TV. Tell folks a little bit about how your situation has changed.
Yeah, I covered the Saints last year, and now I'm going to replace Juan Kincaid as the #3 sports reporter and fill in anchor when the #2, whoever that is we hire, isn't there. So, yeah, getting to cover everything now, not just the Saints. So it's very exciting for me.
Well, this is my 7th time here, and my 6th time was Juan Kincaid sitting in that very seat. So good luck, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're going to be great.
Which is the reason why Juan got hired at Fox 8 now, because he said
great, and a great move for Juan.
Or he's moved on. I don't know. Is it my fault? No, I'm sorry.
That's good. It's got that Scotty touch. No doubt about it. Hey, guys, before we jump into pros, let's talk a little bit about LSU Kentucky last night. Lyons, you and I were talking a little bit before we went on camera. My thoughts about LSU. First of all, great game last night. One of the truly great college games we've seen this season. You look at Kentucky with all the talent that they have, obviously trying to go undefeated, perennial #1 team in the nation right now. LSU's got some great talent on this team. One of the things that when I look at LSU, as I've watched them all season long kind of develop, they don't go to their strength. They don't go inside to Mickey and Martin. And sometimes Martin, it tends to want to be jump shooters. They got guards that again, they're out there shooting the basketball, driving the basketball when they should be trying to go inside out. And I think it hurt them down the stretch against Kentucky. And if they are to make the tournament and make a run, they've got to at least figure out, again, you got to go to your strength.
Oh, there's no doubt. These two are the 2 best players on the team by far. But I got to tell you, they're starting to go to them a little more. But the thing about those two, they're better in a playground situation. No doubt about it with Jabril Martin. He is not a guy that's in a fixed offense. He's gonna succeed. When he gets it kind of in transition, you know it's going to be a basket 9 times out of 10. It's in the half-court set where you start to pull your hair out at times. You know, when he gets the ball, he's not sure what to do. But last night, I thought it was the best game that they played all season by far. You know me, half glass full. I've pulled my hair out even during wins this season. Just watching them, it's been painful. You know, at the end of games, even Vanderbilt in that victory, they did not deserve it. But last night, they put it all together. They had the 10-2 lead. Even when they got behind 58-45, I mean, you thought it was over. Well, they made it to 21-2 run, and the Deaf Dome was the Deaf Dome like it hasn't been since the Shaq and Chris Jackson era.
And you know what? To me, it wasn't even the offensive side of the ball. It was on the defensive side. They kept getting their hands on balls, and the defensive rebounding was fantastic. They got out and ran and got in transition, and that's how they were able to really make that comeback in the second half and go on that big run. So that's when, to me, they're at their best, is when, like you said, they're running up and down the court, and they're quick with their offense. When they get in a half-court set and have to run 30 seconds of clock, they really get bogged down, and that's not a good set for them.
Well, I saw his on camera last night, and in fact, I saw him in an on camera when I was watching another station as well. I tape him all, you know what I do, and I text him. But I was jealous at anyone who was in there last night. My show didn't end until 6. There's no way I could have gotten there till the second half, so I taped it, went home and watched it. I know you weren't at school there like I was in the 90s and in the 80s for regular school, 90s for law school. It was rocking back then. Tell us about what it was like last night to be in that gym.
It was fantastic. The last time I had been in there before last night was when Shaquille O'Neal was there. So it reminded me of those days. Now, obviously, like you said, I wasn't there in the years in between, but it was fantastic. I mean, the crowd was on their feet the entire time. It was completely sold out, standing room only. The football players, Leonard Fournette, Malachi Dupree, those guys were in the front row of the student section.
Very cool.
They were dancing around. So it was a fantastic atmosphere, a lot of support for that team. And I think you got a glimpse into the future of LSU basketball. If they can put that kind of product on the court year in and year out, the fans are going to come out and support them, and they're going to continue to recruit well and land some big-time players.
Well, that's been Johnny Jones's forte. There's no doubt you can see it, just the development of the program under his tutelage so far, his ability to go out and recruit. Where I say his shortcomings are a lot like his mentor, Dale Brown. Again, he probably needs a stronger bench presence on that bench with him. Dale learned that pretty early. Ron Abernathy, Tex Winter, he went out and got those guys. And again, they were with him through a lot of the great runs that LSU went through. And I think Johnny Jones is going to have to figure that out going forward. But guys, I'll ask you, I believe this is a tournament team. They're a bubble team, but I believe they deserve to make it. Southeastern Conference is a pretty tough conference this year. They're going to have to win a few more games, but ultimately, I think they're deserving. The question is, again, can they win enough games down the stretch here and into the tournament to make the tournament? What are your thoughts? Are they tournament bound?
They need to go 5-2 the rest of the way, and win a game in the tournament, in the SEC tournament. Arkansas would be a good win. They don't really have, other than that West Virginia win, a really good win. Arkansas, I think, is a very quality team. The SEC is stronger this year than it was last year. I'm just telling you, I watched the games religiously. It's a good conference. It's not in the Big 12 or Big 10 or maybe even Pac-12, but the bottom line, or definitely not the ACC, but still a pretty good conference. My point is, yes, they're a tournament team, but if they go 10-8, it's going to be, you don't want to put it in the committee's hands. This Kentucky loss, I know you don't want to say any loss is bad, but this is not. It's a good loss.
It's a good loss.
Undefeated Kentucky.
Right.
Last year they beat a team that was 11th ranked, although they made it to the NCAA finals. That was an underdog team that went the way. This is a powerhouse team. Everybody was watching. Vital could not stop raving about these guys, and believe it or not, people listen to Vital.
Sure. What's going to be telling, though, is how they respond to this loss. Sometimes teams this can be a confidence builder for teams, and they can take it and they can build on it and they can run with it and finish out the season strong. Other teams, they might not be able to get up for this next game and drop a game that they should otherwise win. So I think you're going to find out how capable this team is of making a run at the end of the season and into the tournament by how they perform this next game.
No doubt.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Tulane and UNO, so I'll ask about Tulane first. Obviously, Tulane struggling just a bit. Still probably a year or so away from really contending for a tournament.
Eric, this team battles. I got to tell you, I've been to several games. So much hope. 4-2 in conference, now 5 losses in a row, but they've battled each one of these. I mean, listen, Connecticut, they had a 27-24 halftime lead. SMU, a long team, a team that's a tournament team, easy tournament team. They were leading late in the first half, and I know you're like, hey, you got to put 2 halves together, and I get it. But the bottom line is, even other games, Tulsa, the undefeated team at the time in the conference, they got down 16, and they battled to win. They had a 3-pointer to tie at the end of the game. So, once again, this is a team that's at least a year away, but they're battling, not checking out on the coach, and I think that's huge.
Lyons, any thoughts?
Exactly what he said. No, I haven't seen Tulane play this year, but look, they're not the great Tulane teams of the past, and they definitely need a few more pieces. So,
but you got to give Conroy a lot of credit.
Yes.
I mean, again, under tough circumstances, turn this program around very, very quickly. I mean, when he had the defection of again quality players like Durant to Alabama.
Josh Davis, who was in the running for Player of the Year in the conference.
I didn't know if he'd be retained.
Yes.
It looked like a players' revolt, but he's turned this thing around very, very quickly.
He's done a good coaching job as well, man. That triple overtime. Once again, a loss to Central Florida. I watched him coach, and I was like, I'm impressed. I really am.
Coach Schlesinger at UNO, again, a tough season, but again, I think he's a quality coach, and I think given time, he's going to put together a quality program.
Every guy on that team, freshman, sophomore for the most part, they've only got a couple upperclassmen. This is a guy that can coach, man. You talk about coaching. I watch players and watch sets. He's inbounds. They almost always score. And thank goodness they got a big win. They got off the schneid, Deep McNeese this week. I love Coach Les. With all due respect, he's one of my favorite guys in this this town. Give him a little time. He's going to win.
Oh, I agree. Lyons, any thoughts, or should we move on?
Like he said.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
I do like Coach Schlesinger. I've covered UNO a little bit back when I was time speaking UNO, when they were moving, Division III, Division II, all the transition through that, and the school's been through some tough times, and he is a very good X's and O's guy, great coach.
Hey, yes.
And when we get to the inner workings of the Saints, I'm going to be like he said.
Let's shift gears to the Pelicans again as we approach the All-Star break. This is a team that's been up and down. A team that again has had some great wins, like against the Thunder.
Yeah.
You look
the
at
Atlanta Hawks.
That's another great win. But then some horrible losses. To Utah, to the Knicks, to the Sixers, to the Celtics on that road swing.
Every one of those horrible losses came with one of their top 2 players out, and 3 of those 4, both of the top 2 players were out. So. They don't have their best players and have terrible losses. That's the funny thing.
I would agree with you, Scott, but I will say this. I don't think this year, with you look at the tenure of Monty Williams, that injuries are going to be a factor in whether he stays or goes.
No, I agree.
This is a situation where, look, I agree. And I had folks on the radio show complaining about Monty Williams and the loss. But when you're down 3 of your 4 top players, I don't care what team it is in the NBA. Nobody's going to win. Okay, it's very difficult to win. I don't care who you're playing. But I think that card has been played for Monty Williams. There's no way that even is a factor at this point. But with that said, as we reach the mythical halfway part of the season, your thoughts on where the Pelicans are?
Right where I thought they would be. I mean, this is exactly where I thought they would be. Injuries do play a factor on every team, so you can't use that as a complete excuse. Thank goodness it's not last year where literally everybody was hurt. But the bottom line is that you expect a few injuries down the road. This is the 4th time Anthony Davis, 4th different time that he's missed time with injuries. Now, granted, it's not like last year where it's a long stretch. There's short stretches, so he's coming back. This guy has been playing out of his mind when he's in the game. As far as Monty goes, listen, he's going to have to get that 43 to 46 win category for him to even be considered, I think, to be retained. And I don't want to even put it on whether it's playoffs or not, because the thing is, now you're relying on, can Oklahoma City, it's going to be how well they played down the stretch is whether he's going to be retained. Bottom line is this, reevaluate. If you don't think he's the guy that's going to get you there in the long run, find someone else. But right now, I'm so glad that they haven't made a move at midseason, because you got to give him the season to play this out.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I mean, to me, I like the way this team has progressed throughout the season. Yeah, they've dealt with some injuries, but you have to like the way that Tyreek Evans has emerged recently, really passing the ball well, helping run the offense, and you bring in a guy like Pondexter and you work him into the offense, and he's really been helpful, knocking down some big threes. So I think this team has progressed, and they've made the best out of some bad situations, and to me, the team is still behind him, and that's the most important thing.
Well, and that was something I think that a lot of us questioned on that East Coast road swing where they lose to the dregs of the NBA. I mean, when you lose into Philly, you lose in New York, and you lose into Boston, one of the first things you're saying is, wait, are these guys still listening? Is he communicating to this team? To me, guys, I got to say it's playoff or bust. I know a lot of times people say it's unfair if he gets maybe plus 10, plus 11 wins from the previous season, and that's something that maybe if you were in your first, second year, you can build on.
Yeah.
This guy's been here 5 years, and he's a 400-win coach.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think it's going to have to be playoffs or bust for him, and maybe Dell Demps as well, because they seem like they're a package deal at this point. It'll be interesting to see, again, what happens there, because a lot of this also depends on Anthony Davis and his affinity for his coach with this option coming up very, very quickly.
That's my point. I mean, there is a big point. I don't know how that's going to play out. And here's the other thing. Let's just say if they do make them a package deal, who's making the decision at this moment? And we'll get in that later with the Saints organization and obviously the Pelicans.
A lot of package deals with these organizations right now.
Big time. But the fact is, I'm not even worried about who's coaching next season. I just want to go play the rest of the games out. You have 30 more games basically till the end of the season. Let them play it out, and let's worry about that later. I think if you have all the main 6 core players, and these 2 guys they brought in have been godsends. You mentioned Quincy Pondexter, Dante Cunningham. These guys don't even really need to score a whole lot because they play defense against threes in the league. We didn't have that at the start of the season. So if we can get the core six, these guys, and then some backup play at the point guard position, I think we're going to be just fine.
Don't you have to? I mean, you got to credit Monty Williams a little bit though for Davis's like quick improvement over the last few years. I mean, he's gone from a little scrawny.
But most of my callers will say it's all Davis.
No, I mean, I'm
with you 100%.
I got to give him a little credit there. I mean, look, some players take a while to develop in the NBA, and Anthony Davis has really grown very quickly into the player that he is now. I mean, had the highest efficiency rating in the history of basketball.
The history of the game.
The whole entire game. It's unbelievable.
I'm with you, Lyons. I want to give Monty some credit, but you also got to give the credit to Anthony Davis as well. He is a tireless worker. He wants to be the best in the game. And I think that, and again, he's got natural ability that's just off the charts. But yes, I would agree. It looks like that for the most part, and whether it's him or one of the other members of the staff, working with big men has been their forte. The big men seem to get better when they come to New Orleans. And you can look at some guys that have been here and left and went on to other teams. They've been better. The question is, again, going forward is, with the trading deadline coming up, team is over the cap but not over the luxury tax threshold. Will this be the same team we see today that we see when that deadline comes and goes?
That's a very interesting question because I have to think they're going to keep it the same if you know that all these guys are going to be back. If we know, Monty knows that, hey, I'm fighting for my job here as well. The pressure's on. Heck, John Reed wrote an article today about, hey, they're in playoff contention, but the pressure mounts. So he knows what's up. He knows he's got to win. But I think he feels comfortable with the core group he's got. But who knows? Last year we thought Drew Holiday was going to be a short injury. It ended up being the rest of the season. This year we thought it was a week, 2 weeks at most. And now we're into 4, now 5 weeks, and 6 weeks really when the All-Star break's over with. So who knows?
It's a question also when you get to Drew Holiday on when you look at this, hindsight being 2020, you gave up a king's ransom for him, and again, he has not been able to stay healthy. He's the best on-ball defender on this team. I think that a lot of people love what Tyreke Evans is doing, but to me, the point guard is Drew Holiday, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can come back. He's one of the keys going forward.
Can I argue the king's ransom just for a second?
Sure.
Just to play devil's advocate. This was the 6th pick of the draft they gave up, okay? If it wasn't Nerlens Noel, it was going to be Trey Burke, who was 0 for 10 last night against, 3 nights ago. Or 2 nights. My point being is that was a terrible draft. Nerlens Noel is the guy they drafted and traded. That's the one pick. The worst offensive player I've seen in the history of the NBA. Bar none. He's horrible. So I don't care about that pick. He wasn't going to play with the guys they have here now. Then you expected to have 45 wins, okay? Minimum. I mean, that means that's the 20th pick of the draft. I went through the last years from 18 to 20. David West is like one of the only guys in that range. Josh Smith, another, over the last 10 years that have even panned out from 18 to 22. No one expected to have all 5 guys get hurt, missed the most games in recent NBA history for a total starting 5. So that pick got a little better. But the fact is, I didn't mind it because you have to have a defensive point guard in this league. Gravis Vasquez is who you had, and this is the era of point guards, as you know. There's 16 guys in this league right now who I think could start on an all-star team any given time, and we had no one to stop them. So that's how I think Drew Holiday's so valuable, and that's why we're missing him so much when he's gone.
Well, I agree with you about Drew Holiday. I love him as a player. I think that again, he needs to be healthy and on the court. The Pelicans could have went in a different direction. They could have tried to go through the draft, much like Philadelphia has done, and try to build that way. Instead, the philosophy is
how's that?
The philosophy is 4 years. They're going for the guys with a second contract. Because players are coming into the league so young now. Get that learning stage out of the way. Get the second contract. You're paying a little bit more for the guy, but you don't have to go through the growing pains. You're asking me? No, I'd rather have the 4-year guy. But you know what? Drew Holiday's got to stay healthy.
You're no doubt 100% right, and that's the snake bait part.
There's a difference between being injured and being hurt.
But I don't want to be in Philly when I go to the arena and know we're going to lose. Right now, we've talked about they've beaten 12 top-tier teams. Literally, Golden State's like the only one they haven't beaten. I like to know going that you have a chance to win every single night. And right now, it's been miserable for people in Philadelphia.
Sure.
And it's not guaranteed that they're going to be good in 3 years like they keep talking about.
Lyons, your thoughts on Drew Holiday? And I want you to give me your thoughts on the trade deadline, whether the Pelicans will make a move or not.
You know, it's his injury is worrisome because they've called it a stress injury.
Right. And similar to what he had last year.
Yeah, and let's face it, that's a stress fracture. Right. And they're not saying it, but if he's been out this long, that's the problem. And you have to, those injuries, they can really linger.
Yes.
And the pounding day in and day out on the court, I mean, if he comes back too soon, this could turn into him being out for the whole season. So I think it's good that they're being a little cautious with him, but they've got to get him back if they have any chance of making a playoff run. And they cannot continue to win a game and then lose a game and win a game. They have to be able to go on, win 5 or 6 in a row, and get some confidence, really get the momentum going in their favor. As far as the trade deadline, I'm not sure. I think that they're going to go with this team and let them see, once everybody's healthy, let them see what they have there so they can make a decision better for the offseason.
The only way I see them getting involved in any type of trade is a third or fourth team and a 3 or 4 team deal, where maybe they're dumping a John Salmons or something like that to make a deal work.
That would be fine.
Ultimately bringing in maybe a younger player or something like that just to make a deal work at this point. Guys, I will give Dell Demps a tremendous amount of credit, though. You have to. I mean, you looked at the efficiency of this team early, and I was screaming about it. You had no one on the court that could cover a 3. They tried with Tyreke Evans, just unable to really do it. They go out, they get Dante Cunningham for nothing. They bring Quincy Bondexter in here, who has become the de facto leader of this team.
Really has.
I mean, just in a short time. I mean, leadership immediately for this team. And you saw the change in the ability to share the basketball. And a lot of that the credit has been given to a players-only meeting that would happen after the loss to the Knicks, in which Pondexter pulled this team together and said, hey, we need to play a different brand of basketball if we're going to move forward. So I will give Demps some credit there. The question is it enough to get over the hump in the very tough West?
Great point, though, because Coupon came in, and think about what Tyreke, Eric, and Drew, they're all quiet guys.
Yes.
I mean, literally all quiet. They're not the guys that are going to get in your face and call meetings. They're just not that kind of personality. So when he came in, no one knew what to expect, because he was average at best last time he was here. I knew there was one thing.
He's a very young player.
His threes had gotten better since that time. And, you're not going to count on him to be your three-point shooter, but he can get hot, and you knew he was going to give you defense. But the leadership I didn't know about, man. That's a great point you made. And the one last thing on Drew Holiday that I just stressed, I don't think I said the first time, his on-ball defense is so important. He picks guys up at midcourt that are obviously faster, but he's got long wingspan. And they all say, man, when Drew picks us up, we're passing the ball. We don't want any part of it. So it's
how
important.
Nice would it have been to have against Westbrook the other night? I mean, that was
the stats.
The stats.
93 points in 2 games for Westbrook alone. I mean, he would at least hold him to 70.
And I think he was averaging around 25, if I'm not mistaken, in the games previous when Holiday was on the court.
Yeah.
And, of course, he goes off of 45 and, 48?
48, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that tells you all you need to know.
Difference.
And, look, I like Tyreke Evans, okay? I like him as a player. I like the fact now he's sharing the basketball. But, again, he can't take those top-notch point guards that can score the basketball. I mean, that's just one.
He has a skill I always dreamed of having on the court. This dude has an uncanny knack of getting to the hole and scoring on anybody, no matter what size they are. I'm blown away half the time. And his shot has improved. We want to see him distribute a little more, but that's not his game.
He's deceptively shifty. Yeah. It's crazy how he gets to.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's really impressive how he gets to the basket and slides through. He kind of glides through.
And all of a sudden you see his arm roll over here, and it's going in. Yeah.
And the fact now that he's passing the ball more as a point guard, because that's been part of the problem. I mean, part of the problem with this team is when they become stagnant, too much like LSU. Too much dribbling.
Right.
Dribble, the shot clock goes down. Next thing you know, you got to take a shot that's not a good shot, a rush shot, and then of course you come out empty a lot of times on those possessions, and they end up adding up.
I wonder if they're going to have a tough time when Holiday does come back. Now that Evans has been facilitating so much of the offense, are they going to have trouble working them both in together?
Lyons, I'll say this: that excuse has been used and has sailed at this point.
Yeah.
Every time you turn around and there's an injury, you got to hear, well, we need to get some cohesion back.
Right.
These guys have been practicing and playing together for 2 years. If they can't figure it out, maybe they're the wrong guys for the team at this point.
You might have won $1 million though if you put 100 on before the season. That Tyreke's going to get 12 assists in 4 out of 5 games, like he did.
Yeah.
I mean, I was blown away. I still am kind of blown away. But he's not going to give you every game.
Guys, one thing that concerns me as you get in, and if you're going to talk about the P word, and I'm not doing that on my radio show yet, and I'm not going to do it here. If they can qualify, that would be the playoffs.
My mind was rampant.
Yeah. Okay, that would be the playoffs. Is team defense. Even obviously losing Holiday hurts you. Even with Anthony Davis, who obviously is a great defender. Monty Williams, who is known as a defensive coach. This is not a good defensive team. Just not. Too many times, guys getting free to the basket almost untouched. The rotation, slow. This is something that maybe we got a little spoiled when Williams first came here because he had a defensive team. You had Chris Paul, you had David West. Obviously, you had guys that had been playing together for a while. But this is a team that if you get into the playoffs, they got to prove to me that they can defend like you need to defend to win in a series.
I'm having flashbacks of being on your show from Atlanta and talking about, hey, well, at least his calling card is defense. This guy is a great defensive coach. It's almost strange that they have gone such the other way. But maybe because they have 5 guys that are such offensive players, maybe they said, okay, let's just outscore them. We don't have a lot of great defenders. Anthony Davis is still not a great off-ball defender. You know what I'm saying? He's not a great help defender. He's going to block some shots. But the fact is, yeah, you're right. I don't even have an answer for that because I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
Defensively?
Yeah, I mean, they're not good enough to make the playoffs the way they're playing right now. I mean, that's just a fact. They've got to tighten it up as far as team defense goes if they have any shot. I mean, they're in last place in the division right now, and of course they're in the best division in basketball, but they're going to have to stop some pretty good offensive basketball. Right,
and I will say this again: we all know if there is an opportunity to get into a series, it's half court in the playoffs. You got to be able to run a half court offense. Now they've got options in terms of guys that can score, but one guy that's got to get out of his slump. It's got to be, at this point, Ryan Anderson. He has not played as we had been accustomed to when he came here from Orlando. Whether it was the injury, slow coming back from that injury, but he takes a lot of shots, and a guy that takes a lot of shots has got to be able to knock those shots down. He's got to get back to where he was in terms of being that guy that you would count on to be able to nail that three-pointer, especially if you're going to get into the half-court set in a playoff situation.
One of my favorite locker room guys ever, and I've been around NBA locker rooms for 23 years. However, his trunk is heavier this year. I don't know if it's because he had so much time off trying to recoup from that very serious injury last season, but he was lighter. He bounced around. He got out to the three-point shot. His shot was quicker for the last few years, quick release. That's the main thing for shooters in the NBA, other than making it. But the fact is, you're right. He's about 10 percentage points lower on percentage, and he takes a lot of them. But I love the fact, as a guy, that the only thing I can really do in retrospect was shoot. Shooters just keep shooting.
That's because Scott used to do the same thing. He had no conscience. He just kept shooting the basketball.
That's what you got to do, baby. Just keep shooting.
Shooters keep shooting.
That's what I keep saying. Shoot the ball, man. No, but the bottom line is this, Ryan
I played
Anderson.
with some of those guys. Yeah. I wanted the basketball coming my way every once in a while.
Good luck. And but Ryan Anderson is going to be the key. And I used to say this early on. If you look at the stats on him and winning and losing earlier in the year, when he was 3 of 5 or 4 of 6, they won. But those games were few and far between. It was more like 1 of 6, 1 of 5, and there was always a loss in that case.
No doubt about it. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Great panel for you tonight. Scott Alexander of ESPN 100.3 in here in New Orleans, and also Lyons Yellin of WWL-TV. My name is Eric Asher. I'm your host every Thursday night right here on WLAE-TV with a rebroadcast on Friday, 10 p.m. here on WLAE-TV, and now a new time on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, 9 p.m. on Friday nights, or you can set the DVR. We'll be right back. We'll switch gears. We'll talk a little Saints. We'll get to LSU and Tulane signing day. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is literally saving kids' lives.
It's a very special place, friendly place.
To see the kids that they're helping on a daily basis was unbelievable.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude.
Discoveries made at St. Jude are freely shared.
The hardest cancer cases in the world go to St. Jude. We won't stop until no child dies from cancer.
Join us.
Join us
in supporting Hoops for St. Jude.
Visit stjude.org/hoops to find out how.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. We are taping tonight's program because of the Mardi Gras holiday. Happy Mardi Gras to one and all. Hope you have a safe and fun Mardi Gras season. Lyons Yellin of WWL-TV and Scott Alexander of ESPN 100.3 here in New Orleans are our guests tonight. Guys, it's hard to talk about. I've been talking about it on my show for months, and of course, talked about it on the show a couple days before the rest of the media kind of got involved in the Benson family feud, and it's gotten exactly as I predicted. It was really going to get ugly, and you knew this. You know, I'd gotten information. There was a lot of problems within the front office with the LeBlancs since they had domiciled themselves, Ryan and Renee, along with Rita. A lot of infighting that was going on. A lot of chaos is the way it was described to me. It also was described to me again that Mr. Benson was in the early stages of dementia, as I reported that. Of course, we know now that all this has kind of come full circle. We're kind of seeing this play out in front of our very eyes. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward with this as the courts now have taken over. Guys, Lyons, I'll start with you and just your overall thoughts of what we're seeing right now. And you know, for an organization that has prided itself over the last decade or so, with so much stability,
right,
to now be on the cusp of being maybe one of the most unstable franchises on both basketball and football that may be in either one of those leagues. And remember, one of the reasons why David Stern made sure that Tom Benson was the owner of this team was the stability of ownership. And who would have thought just couple years later, we're staring this type of situation in the face where there literally could be a split. Right. Your thoughts?
You know, it's so funny that when they set up this succession plan years ago, he had just married Gail. They hadn't been together long, so it was really the only thing that he could do. And now, after you see how it's played out over the last 10 years, you think that maybe it's not a good thing for Rita to take over the Saints and have that much power over the professional franchises, but like you said, you never know what the true state of Mr. Benson is, and the courts are going to determine that. So it's just an ugly situation, and I think that probably Gail, the way I see it, is doing what's in the best interest of her husband, which you should expect any wife to do. But you also see from the relative side why they're fighting this and why they worry. So, you know, it's an ugly situation all around. It's not one I think is going to be resolved anytime soon. And I think the guys your ilk, lawyers are really the only ones that benefit from this.
Well, I met this guy at Airline Drive, okay? That's what I met right the first day of training camp when they got back from the Greenbrier. But I did not know him at all, but the thing is, he's there all the time. I'm not there. I don't see the inner workings, but all I kept hearing was from other people. Man, it like you said, it's chaos. The whole deal with Rita Benson, and I just like to know it firsthand. I'm always hearing, so I didn't want to report that on my radio show, but it got so out there. The whole thing with 30, assistants in 6 years, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting. So you hear the Saints side, and you hear the side. Hey, it's going to be great. You hear Drew Brees. Oh, she's great. Gail's great. And everything else. And then I had a talk with a friend of mine who's the attorney for the other side, and I've known this guy for 30 years, and most of it's off the record. But the fact is, he says, just take yourself out of the shoes of, hey, most of the people that are going to be in a good spot right now. The people that are in charge, Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis, they had a coup. Because now they're sitting there, they're pretty set no matter what happens. I don't think that they're going anywhere no matter what. Say we had 3 losing seasons. And he said, listen, on the flip side, wouldn't you want some accountability on that side? So he got me at least thinking about both sides as opposed, because the media in the beginning was very heavy for the one side with Gail.
It's got to be somewhere in the middle. I mean, it's like most situations in my mind. It's probably a little bit on Gail's side is right, and a little bit on the relative side, Renee is kind of right. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think that like you were just mentioning, I was having this conversation last night with Glenn Gilbo. What is going to happen when you have so much power with Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton? What is going to happen in a situation where they have a few losing seasons, people are calling for their head? I mean, it's going to be even crazier when you have – it's going to be like the third rail of the Saints organization.
Well, guys, they are. The thing is, they've had this power for a while now. You know, Mr. Benson has been hands-on, but not really hands-on. The upper management of the New Orleans Saints, when you talk about Dennis Lauscha, you talk about Mickey Loomis, Greg Bensel, you talk about some of the other members of that board of directors, they have controlled this team for the most part. Sean Payton controls the football side. The basketball side is the side that's in limbo right now. Obviously, Dell Demps is the general manager. We'll see if he's going to be the de facto general manager when it's all said and done, and how they're going to set that hierarchy up ultimately if those two guys, Williams and Demps, are jettisoned. But, you know, again, to me, it's going for broke now. If the judge rules in both Texas and in New Orleans in Mr. Benson's favor, then the hierarchy at the Saints will stay in place. But the house has been burnt down. If for some reason the LeBlancs win this lawsuit and they ultimately take control of these franchises, you'll see mass changes, in my opinion, in the front office. You'll see guys that, because the lines have been drawn here, that were ultimately in the court of Gail Benson, that those guys will go. I mean, I've reported on my radio show, Sean Payton saying he will never work for a LeBlanc. And so, again, I think we'll see this down the line. So from a stability standpoint, I think the fan base is saying, hey, man, you know, we don't want this team to change any. We'd like to see the same stability in the front office that has worked. On the flip side, when you look at the incestuous nature of this, from the family situation with the LeBlancs and the Bensons to now, when you look at what's going on in Texas, Stanley Rosenberg, longtime lawyer and confidant of Mr. Benson, the gentleman that is his lawyer, the law firm that runs the trust. His son-in-law is the trustee that originally ruled against Mr. Benson, trying to move those assets, which was, again, a lot of people didn't believe happened. Now, Phil Hardberger, the former San Antonio mayor, who was in cahoots with Tom Benson in the aftermath of the largest man-made disaster in the history of this country, a.k.a. Hurricane Katrina, to be able to keep the team in San Antonio. All of a sudden now, he is the trustee, okay, along with another trust attorney in San Antonio. So for at least for the next 30 days, they're going to take an inventory of what's going on with the Shirley Benson Trust, which does not include the teams now. That's the other assets. Right. That's the real estate, the banks, and I believe the automobile dealerships. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you flip it to what went on in Kern Reese's court this week here in civil court here in New Orleans. It was the fact that the organization has almost tried to, and I don't want to call it much like a puppeteer, but has tried to put Mr. Benson in front of a camera when it was friendly fire. You know, I mentioned this on my radio show when I broke it on that Monday, broke the story. I said, if I am wrong, if my sources are wrong, Mr. Benson needs to do a press conference, as he has done in the past. Talk about a losing season for the NFL franchise. Talk about your NBA franchise that's in flux now. That didn't happen. Now there will be 3 doctors that will take a look at Tom Benson. They will evaluate Tom Benson. And the way Louisiana law is set up, and Scott, you know this, it's going to be very difficult for them to prove that he is not competent enough to be able to handle his assets. So what happens after that is going to be really the next story. And again, it's an irrevocable trust. Right. We don't know the language of that irrevocable trust going forward on whether he can substitute assets, on whether he can change the heirs of that particular trust going down the line. And that's not something we're going to know until this thing really reaches the courts.
The burden of proof to overturn a man's will, which is what his wishes are when he passes on, are very high. I mean, extremely high. It's going to be extremely tough. I don't care. They have to show almost full dementia. Not just, hey, I'm kind of losing my marbles, as every 87-year-old does. Years old. Right. But the other side of this is, when I talked to my friend, the attorney on the LeBlanc side, he was extremely ecstatic yesterday. He said these are 2 clear victories we had. Period.
I would agree with that.
2 clear victories.
On both sides.
And I said, here, why don't you go? I said, why haven't they gone public and said that this is the one thing New Orleanians care about? They care mostly about keeping this team in this city. Hey, yeah, you want to keep the regime around, that'd be great. But keeping the team in the city, I said, that's the fear of most New Orleanians. Why haven't they said that? He goes, he goes, do you think most New Orleans people don't think they're going to move the Texas? I said, well, that's one of the things. They have Texas holdings. I mean, that's their roots, too. And he goes, well, maybe I should get them to say it publicly. I'm like, that would help. I mean, go public and say it, because right now I think that's our fear here is that they move the team more than anything else.
But let me say this. Speaking to some individuals that are close to both Adam Silver and Roger Goodell, these individuals who are my sources have assured me these teams are not going anywhere. They are New Orleans teams. They're not going anywhere. Change in ownership, have to sell, whatever. These teams are entrenched here in New Orleans. Ultimately, again, I think the New Orleans people are a little worried when you see what happened in Texas. You see Hamburger involved in this. They are a little worried that if something happens down the line here, if the LeBlans or somehow win this, that they will take these teams to Texas. Remember, you need approval from the owners to be able to do that. Well, I don't see that happening.
Well, they're not. If they want to move the team, they're going to move the team, and they'll go to court like Al Davis did, and they'll win an antitrust suit, probably like he did. Right. So I don't think the NFL is going to stop anyone from moving their team if they really want to. I think that's how one is going to get to Los Angeles eventually, probably St. Louis. But yeah, they probably need to be a little better on the PR front in terms of Rita and Renee and Ryan and them. But they have not done a very good job communicating with the fans. You
mentioned the LeBlans with 2 wins. The biggest, the most curious thing that I saw was what happened in the Texas courtroom. They went there to discuss whether the temporary restraining order would be extended, and they ended up putting in temporary receivers to the trust. The judge really jumped a step instead of dealing with that, and that's, I think, is going to be part of their appeal going forward to the 4th Circuit in Texas. I'm talking about the bench at this point, saying that maybe the judge was a little out of his realm. You were only there to be able to extend the temporary restraining order so that you couldn't touch the assets, not to put 2 people in charge to evaluate those assets or to protect those assets. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there going forward. But I think it all kind of gravitates around what's going to happen in civil district court in terms of whether Mr. Benson will be found competent or not to run these franchises.
You know what I'm tired of? Talking about the courtrooms like we did during Bounty Gate with Vilma. I'd rather talk about what's going to happen next season, the product on the field.
But we've been sucked in, and there's no other way around it. And again, when you're looking at what's happening, how this is unfolding, look, I've talked about it. It makes me feel almost dirty to talk about this every day. I mean, it really does. You're talking about people's personal business, and it's out there for everyone to see. And it's going to get uglier. It's going to get uglier. As this thing goes into court and drags out, personal stuff will be brought up, things within the organization. Again, the Saints are well known as an organization that on the way out, you have to sign a document that will not allow you to disclose anything that's happened within that organization. And ultimately, if you go to court, that's off the table. So there will maybe some things that will be said that, again, obviously the organization doesn't want said. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there going forward. But I don't see this being rectified anytime soon. This will drag on into the season probably before it's all said and done. When you talk about whoever loses is going to appeal.
The next question, can it affect the product on the field?
That was where I was going next, Scotty, but go ahead.
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, the product on the field was affected by expectations this year, so you have to hope.
And we all bought in.
We all bought into it. So you have to hope that they've learned from this past season and we'll put all the off-field stuff, out of the picture and just focus on winning this year. But yeah, it's going to hang over. It's going to hang over the team this year, and it's really, truly, it's something they should be able to distance themselves from. Look, this is a family dispute at its core, and it's going to get nasty. But there's just a whole lot of money involved, and when that's the case, look, it's going to be on TV, and people are going to be interested in it. But the players, they need to stay as far away from this as possible.
Everybody says it reminds them of Dallas. Forget Dallas. This goes back centuries. We've had these same kind of arguments over, successions for years and years.
That's why I was very surprised a guy as media savvy as Drew Brees to get involved in this. Normally, it would have been, hey, you know what? That's a family situation. I'm not going to get involved in it. I play for the New Orleans Saints. I love New Orleans. Move on. You don't want to get in and take sides. You don't want to come in and embrace Gale, and at the same time, and you're putting a stiff arm on the LeBlans at that point.
Didn't it just kind of show you what this is really, how deep it really is?
No, it does.
That comment, and he was all, man, Gale is such a wonderful lady, and I know Gale is a wonderful lady. I've met her at least half a dozen times, but boy, that was, like you said, that is a stiff arm, and you know.
It'll be interesting to see if it starts to look like it's going the other way,
Right.
if people start to
Reed is
kind
not
of
so
hedge
bad.
their bets a little bit.
Well, guys, you know, I've said this often. Big city, small town, can't keep a secret in New Orleans.
Yes.
And you want to look at that compound, you can't keep a secret in that compound either. Those players, those people that are involved in those two organizations, they know what's happening on that compound. There's a reason why the media room is no longer has access to the main building. They want to keep the media as far away from what's going on inside that compound as they can. Let's talk about on the field. Saints make some moves. Finally, they announced something we've known for a while, some coaching changes. At this point, Dennis Allen is brought in as the senior defensive assistant. Guys, I don't know how that's going to work. I got to be honest with you. You know, if I'm doing a job and then all of a sudden they bring a guy in and he's going to be looking over my shoulder and he happens to be FOC, friend of the coach, I don't know if I can work under those circumstances if I'm Rob Ryan. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen with going forward with that. Lyons, your thoughts?
It's going to be an interesting dynamic out there, and it was so. Maybe I'm looking way too far into this, but when they put out the release today, they had Dennis Allen's name listed ahead of Rob Ryan's.
Saw it.
And I'm sitting there thinking, so you got Joe Vitt, and then you got Dennis Allen, and then a few more down after the offensive coordinator. There's Rob Ryan. How is that going to work? Who is going to be calling the plays? Who is going to be the ultimate, calling the shots for that defense? It's not going to be Sean Payton. He's going to be on the offensive side of the ball. One of those two guys has to be the top dog. The players have to know it. The other coaches have to know it.
That's the key right there. The players have to know who's in charge.
And if there's more chaos on that side of the ball this year, this unit is never going to be a cohesive unit. They're never going to communicate well, and that was the problem this year, communication. So you have to name one guy who's going to be in charge, and if it's not Rob Ryan, it's really hard for me to envision him making it through the season.
If it's not Rob Ryan, then why is he here?
Why exactly?
Okay, if this was Dallas Cowboy Rob Ryan, if this was Oakland Raider Rob Ryan, even Cleveland Brown Rob Ryan, he'd have been gone. And I think, honestly, one of the main reasons he's staying is his son's a senior in high school, playing high school football, and he's like, you know what, I'm just going to take the punch, let it roll, and I don't want a situation where I'm going to be a divider. Let's just see if it works, and if it doesn't, he has his reasons for leaving. So the bottom line, or he'll be asked to leave. The bottom line is this, it is uncomfortable already. We see it when you got an FOC, and you said, I noticed the first thing I noticed was his name ahead of Rob Ryan's. I was like, wow, I know Dennis Allen was just a head coach, but he's still somewhat of a newbie compared to Rob Ryan.
They are setting up almost the same scenario that we're seeing in the front office right now with ownership, where you got split allegiances within that defensive locker room. You know, I mean, who are you going to turn to? I'm listening to Rob, I'm listening to Dennis. Peyton has to come out and be definitive early in the process. Rob Ryan is my defensive coordinator, and Dennis Allen, this is his duties. And if not, we could see complete chaos by midseason.
And this is a problem that I have with this is one problem I have with the way Sean Payton runs things. It's a very tight-knit group. It's the Parcells tree, and if you're in it, you're in it. And if you're from the outside, well, they really have a tough time bringing in new people and accepting new ideas. You heard Mickey Loomis talk about bringing in Jeff Ireland. They wanted a fresh set of eyes. This is not a fresh set of eyes. This is a Bill Parcells guy.
Yes.
And was at Dallas with him and came up through the ranks with him, and Bill Parcells loves him. And so Sean Payton
everybody's
hired
FOC.
him. Right.
Friend of the
everybody.
coach.
So don't tell me that you're bringing in fresh eyes and you want to go in a new direction, because that's not the case. And that's really what the Saints need going forward.
Right. They've made some other changes. John Morton is new wide receivers coach. Joel Thomas is the new running back coach at this point. Last year's running back coach now moves to the tight ends coach. Again, longtime coach Terry Malone is gone, which leads me to my next question. Again, we're talking about friend of the coach here. Lyons, you and I were talking off camera about it. I brought it up on this program, brought it up on my radio show. I'm sorry. Bill Johnson, Joe Vitt, Greg McMahon. You look at the special teams, they have not been a great special teams for a long, long time. Show me one linebacker that Joe Vitt has developed on this team. One. Just give me one, okay, since his tenure here. Bill Johnson had a lump of clay to work with these young defensive linemen. We got 1 year out of him, and then last year kaput. Again, does he have what it takes to develop? The only thing I'm seeing on their resume right now, and look, no disrespect because I'm not a coach killer, but you got to ask the question, if your defense has constantly been the Achilles heel for this team, why are you not making changes with the defensive coaching staff?
Well, I think they did a little bit, and I really like bringing in Willis, who He did coach at Alabama, so you don't have to give me that. But he would coach Rolando McClain at Alabama during that national championship when they had this great
you went to Alabama?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to throw that out. I didn't think you want anybody at WWL. Your fans know that. But since it's out there, he went to Alabama.
There we go. But no.
He loves the Crimson Tide.
I am looking forward to LSU baseball, though, and I will root for LSU baseball over anything.
He goes with the winner. All right.
But anyway, so yeah, bringing in Willis, I think that speaks a lot to who they want to really be working with these linebackers. Yes, Joe Vitt will continue to coach the linebackers and will be a big influence on this team, but I think Willis is a very strong personality. He's a great on-field coach and will really relate well to all of those players out there. So I think you'll see an improvement there. And then I also think Dennis Allen is a senior defensive assistant, whatever that may be. He has coached the defensive line before. So I think you're going to see him wear a bunch of different hats and step in and really kind of assist some of these guys that may be struggling a little bit and give them a new direction.
Don't forget, Joe Vitt took a hit from Sean Payton a few years ago. That's a lifelong.
No, look. I mean, he's the eyes and ears of Sean Payton on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, I mean, they don't think Rob Ryan doesn't know it. I mean, we know it, so Rob Ryan knows it. But I mean, you could be FOC all you want. At some point, you've got to be able to develop players, and we haven't developed a linebacker. I mean, I'm just, this is not the Dome Patrol. Vilma came in as a polished product, and so has Lofton. But show me some other guys that they've drafted that have ascended as great linebackers, and they don't have any, and they haven't had any. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And again, it'll be interesting to see if last year was an anomaly, or if ultimately that these young defensive linemen can play like they did 2 seasons ago rather than they did last year. Which brings me to Junior Gillette. Okay, off the field issues, involved in domestic abuse. We knew going into this, the NFL could care less what the court system does. They're going to be their own judge, jury, and executioner. He's going to be out until they figure out whether he was involved in this or not. The situation with his cousin, riding through Kenner, busted for marijuana, a woman who was allegedly in the car, also prescription drugs without a prescription, the crowd that he kind of hangs with. This is a guy that was your captain. He's also a guy that threw dirt on some guys that were legacy guys for this team. Some have said in the locker room that, maybe his leadership leaves a lot to be desired. $17 million roster bonus coming up on March 13th. I'm already on record saying Junior Gillette will not see that money.
I've said it
Junior
too.
Gillette is gone.
Yeah.
And he will be made an example of for this team, for the rest of this team. And also, the Saints realized they made a mistake. Guys,
I was in the locker room with you standing next to Junior Gillette. I remember that game against Tampa Bay when he had the interception, they fumbled. There's not a more delightful guy to be around the locker room. But the bottom line is this. I think they knew immediately after Game 3 that maybe they made a mistake with that money. We all kind of knew. He's a $6 to $7 million player.
$41 million,
for a guy that can't play against the run.
Right.
Okay, listen, let's take that away. This happened, and I'm not going to say the Saints have their out, but the bottom line is this. When you have a $17 million deal, it's called,
the Saints have their out.
It's called business. And I'm just saying this, Junior, if you listen, and we love you, man, but the bottom line is this. That was a bad mistake at the wrong time with the NFL's tenor, with the whole domestic abuse situations going on with Ray Rice and everybody else. Greg Hardy, he felt the heat all year.
Right.
Junior Gillette's going to get a hammer. It's probably not going to be the same because it's a different situation, but a hammer nonetheless.
But again, hammer or not from the NFL, I just think an example would be made of him in that locker room, a captain, a guy that was one of the highest paid players on the team, third highest paid player on this team.
Yeah.
And that ultimately they're going to jettison.
He said all the right things coming into the season, knowing that he was so close to getting that new contract. And I think it's another situation of once he got that contract, he kind of went back to being carefree junior and the guy
got
that
paid,
could do
man.
no
He got
wrong.
paid.
He got paid, and then he got elected captain, and he just did not handle that the right way. When you get paid that kind of money, you're not just earning that money to perform on the field. You're getting paid for what you do in the locker room.
You're the face of the organization.
Exactly. You're one of those and off the field.
Right.
You're one of those guys that has to show the younger players how to do it. How do they have a chance to earn that contract?
Right. You can't get in Twitter wars with fans. You can't do that. Those are things you cannot do. And again, it's not Gillette's first time. He had these same problems in college as well. It's why he got kicked out of Temple. Family members allegedly cousins stealing selling a laptop. He took again, he loses his scholarship. I think Junior Galette's days with New Orleans are over.
And you want to like the guy. He's such a nice guy.
And he'll be good at his next stop.
Right.
But he's not worth $41 million, $23 million guaranteed.
You know how long we did the Jimmy Graham protracted offseason?
Yeah.
And that took months and months and months. Wide receiver, tight end. Well, all of a sudden they sneak a contract even more than Jimmy Graham.
They didn't have to do it, though, Scott. They had just signed him to a 3-year deal. They had just signed him a 3-year deal. They were worried he was going to hit the incentives on a 3-year deal and become an unrestricted free agent, and they tried to jump the gun. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen with Cam Jordan this year.
That's my next thing.
Okay, because it's a contract year for him.
He has got to come through.
Oh, he will. Oh, come on. We know it. Come on.
But I can't see them bringing him back even if he has a great season. I think he's gone either way.
Guys, I've got about 3 minutes left. Want to ask quickly. Biggest need for this team going into the free agency and into the draft period. I'll say it right now. They've got. I know a lot of people want to talk defense. I say offensive line.
Thank you.
You've got to bolster the guard position.
No arguments here.
Okay, if you don't take care of the interior of this offensive line, Drew Brees will not make it through next season.
Zero argument. I was going to say this. I was going to say everybody says cornerback, maybe line. I'm like, it's offensive line, man. I mean, listen, they run block okay, but the pass blocking was just horrid in the middle. I've never seen so much push get through the middle. And I know you had an old center that was kind of trying to pave a way for Lolito, but the bottom line is it's not just that. The guards looked very old this year. They've got to do something.
I don't think it's as much Jari Evans. He's been hit a lot this offseason. I think Grubbs was a much more concern than Evans. Evans hardly ever got help from anyone. He played one-on-one all season, and he did a fairly good job. He played injured. He's been one of the most durable players in the NFL for his entire career, and he's only 31 years old right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not one of those guys that puts a lot of heat on him. I think it would be a huge mistake for the Saints not to bring him back. But
I think
Grubbs,
they will, though,
yes.
Lyons. I mean, just simply because he's a Super Bowl winner. I think they learned a lesson from last year in jettisoning the guys that know the Peyton way.
Yeah.
And I think that he will stay, but I think Grubbs is probably gone. Okay, we agree. You got to get that interior of the offensive line shored up. Next, what is it next?
There's no Zach Martin in this draft that's going to be available at 13 like he was at 18 for the Cowboys. You got to figure out a free agent that's going to be $5 million or less. That's the only way you can figure this out.
Right. Cornerback as well?
Then you got to go cornerback.
Right.
You have to. You have to give. The Saints were at their best. You know, it was unfortunate they lost Jabari Greer and he had to retire, but you saw an immediate drop-off after he was injured, and Keenan Lewis did not have that companion on the other side of the field. In today's NFL, you saw the two teams in the Super Bowl had it. The Saints need it. You've got to have two good cornerbacks that can shut down either side.
You really need three, right, Lyons?
You do.
Really
you need
three.
more, but you've got, at the very minimum, you have to have two guys. You have to.
Agreed. Guys, if they jettison, as I believe they will, Junior Galette, obviously pass rusher moves up as well. But my gosh, they surely need an athletic linebacker, don't they?
Man, now we got four positions.
Yeah. I mean, but
quarterback, defensive end, linebacker, offensive line.
Those are the four
positions. Some would tell you they need a wide receiver that can get off the line.
You know what? I think they may be able to get a Lance Moore back that maybe help that wide receiving core. Maybe not be the burner that they need, but I think they'll help it. But those four positions, I think, are positions they really have to concentrate on.
To me, Junior Galette's saving grace is probably going to be the fact that they don't have many linebackers, and they might go to him and say, look, we're going to restructure this deal, or we're going to let you go, and they might have some leverage there, but it's hard for me to see.
The NFL might say you're missing 6 games. So.
Right, and then they're eating that money, for sure. Guys, thanks so much for being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. It's been an absolute blast tonight.
Awesome as always, my friend.
Scott Alexander of ESPN New Orleans 100.3 FM and Lyons Yellin of WWL TV. Thanks so much for watching tonight's program. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette at a new time, 9 p.m. You can catch me on the radio, 9:90 a.m. WGSO, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. each and every weekday. If you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, you can check out each and every episode at ericasher.com. And you can always download my podcast or listen live to my radio show at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our great panel tonight, Scott Alexander and Lyons Yellin. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, Philip Williamson, Amanda Lyons, and my director, William Hill. New Orleans, have a great Mardi Gras. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night for Inside New Orleans Sports. Happy Mardi Gras and have a great evening.